All right. Well, to respect everyone's time, I think we can get started with the mindfulness. And also, we're just gonna, are we doing the opening poll? Sorry, I forgot. Just checking with my team. No, we're just gonna do a mindfulness. Okay. So this is one of my favorite mindfulness activities. Anyone who's able, feel free to turn on your camera and join us. If you're not able to turn on your camera, we understand that too. Um, but this mindfulness is more of a participate mindfulness. I like to do it with youth or families when kind of the energy is low, and this can help bring the energy back up and get focused. It works well in individual and group settings, and it's called Shake It Out. And so what I'm going to ask everyone to join along with me. What we're going to do is we're going to count down. You can do it from 10 to 1, but just for time, we'll do it from 5 to 1 today. And you'll start with shaking out your right hand, your left hand, your right leg, your left leg. So everyone start with your right hand, ready to shake it out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Left hand, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right leg, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Left leg, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 1, 1, 1, 1. Awesome. Thank y'all. Hopefully that gave you a little boost in energy and refocused of attention, maybe after your lunch break. Also recognize some people might be on your lunch break. Please feel free to eat and enjoy whatever you need to today to keep yourself with us here in the room. We really appreciate you joining us. And so today I just wanted to briefly introduce our hub member, Dr. Lindsey Bruett, who is going to be doing our didactic today. And I had your bio pulled up and I don't know where it went. So give me 1 second to pull that back up. So again, just to reorient folks, we might have some new folks. The way that we do our echo sessions here is we will have the first half of the hour will be a didactic from Dr. Bruett, and feel free to ask questions in the chat or at the end in Q&A as you have them. And then at the second half of the hour, we'll ask somebody to volunteer to maybe bring up a case, a youth, a patient, a student, or their families that might benefit from some of the strategies that Lindsey's talking through today. And then we will together kind of brainstorm how to support that youth in your settings. And so Dr. Lindsey Bruett is a licensed clinical psychologist and consults with families and providers of children and adolescents. Her areas of expertise include evidence-based treatment and assessment of eating disorders, anxiety, depression, disruptive behavior, trauma, and OCD. She highly values the importance of including family when supporting young people and specializes in parent-based interventions. Dr. Bruett has extensive experience providing care and consultation across the socioeconomic spectrum and is committed to continually striving to reduce healthcare disparities caused by systematic oppression. She loves partnering with providers and families to support mental health. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Lindsey Bruett.
Thanks so much, Dr. Hack, and great to be with you today. And that mindfulness made me smile, so I really appreciate that. All right. Are you seeing my slides in the correct view? Great, thank you. Okay, so some announcements. We were formerly Cat Portal, we're now CalMap. We welcome folks to call us for consultation. We'd love to talk with you, and our website and phone number are on this slide. We also have a new-ish offering, which is that folks can engage with our recorded monthly webinars and get CME credit. And so we'd love for folks to take advantage of that. That's a free service, as are all of our educational opportunities. And finally, some information about our funders, to whom we are grateful. All right, so we're going to be talking about how thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are connected. We're going to be talking about why feelings are helpful, why we as humans, why we think we've evolved to have emotions, and some strategies to help when feelings become difficult. Okay, so this is the cognitive behavioral triangle, or CBT triangle. For folks that are familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, you know this really well. For other folks, that's fine. It doesn't matter. You don't need to know that ahead of time. But basically, this is the idea that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are all connected. and they form sort of a triangle. And if we intervene in any one corner of the triangle, we can change the other corners of the triangle. And I'll illustrate that more as we go today. I'm grateful to Pamela Hayes, Dr. Pamela Hayes, who also introduced the idea, which should be sort of obvious. We don't talk about it a lot, that environment also influences all of these aspects of the triangle. And again, we'll talk more about what that means. All of this is also influenced by culture. So because of the way that I was raised, because of the way that my ancestors experienced the world, my experience of, say, anxiety is going to be different than someone who was raised in a different sort of environment. And so we want to also keep that in mind when we're working with young people and families. Okay, so to illustrate this, if we're thinking about a young person, they spend a lot of time in school. So we wanted to use an example that's relevant to school. So thinking about, say they have a math test coming up today. It's Thursday morning. They've got a math test after lunch today at school, and they're having the thought, I'm going to fail this math test. That might cause them to ask to stay home from school. Dad, I really don't want to take this test. I think I have a tummy ache. I think I have a fever. I think I need to stay home. If they get to school, they might be extra quiet in the classroom, less likely to talk to their friends, sort of seeming socially withdrawn. Some kids also might manifest in a different way. They might have more acting out behaviors. They might be more likely to talk out of turn or be getting out of their seat or have difficulty kind of regulating those behaviors. Both of those responses are normative responses to anxiety or to other difficult emotions. Feelings wise, this young person might be feeling worried and anxious. They might have that feeling of sort of butterflies in their tummy. A lot of people experience the physical sensations of anxiety in their gut. They might have increased heart rate, feeling flushed. They might feel sweaty. They might feel really hot or cold. They might have disruptions in hunger cues, feeling more or less hungry. All of those things would be common physiological experiences of anxiety. Thinking about the environment. So the ambiance in the classroom might be impacting. So maybe this young person is having that more kind of urge to act out behavior. And maybe it's a chaotic day in the classroom. Halloween is coming up next week, and maybe people are talking about their costumes and starting to have a lot of candy and getting really excited. And so maybe that's going to have this young person be even more likely to have difficulty kind of inhibiting their urge to act out. Do they have social relationships in the classroom? We know that can be protective. So maybe they're sitting at their desk and they're feeling nervous, but their best friend is sitting next to them and can kind of distract them or say it's going to be okay. Versus if their friend is out sick that day and they don't have that social support available right there. Thinking about the home structure as well, were they fed a breakfast by a parent who was sort of checking in with them and saying, you're going to do great, honey. You studied on your test. I know you can do it. Or did they have to get themselves out the door in the morning? Or were there a lot of stressors happening with, people needing to go off in different directions and not having the bandwidth to check in with this young person about their test or even maybe know that that's happening? Are they hungry? Did they have breakfast today? Are they tired? Are they getting over a cold? All of those things are going to probably make these difficulties more challenging. Why do we have emotions? They give us information about our experience. So if I am, I work here in San Francisco. I park about 10-minute walk away from my office. Sometimes I stay kind of late. And if I am walking over the highway overpass in the evening, if I start to feel sort of nervous, that maybe gives me information about the safeness of the situation. And maybe next time I'm going to think like, maybe I should get out of here before dark. Maybe that would be safer. Emotions also communicate to and influence others. So if our team is in a meeting and we're kind of going through tasks and I'm sort of starting to get this worried look on my face, Dr. Hack and Dr. Holloway might say, oh, I'll take this task on, Lindsay. You look like you're feeling overwhelmed. Emotions also help to motivate and prepare us for action. So if I am cooking eggs in the morning and I accidentally touch the hot cast iron pan, I'm going to quickly move my hand back, right? I'm not going to sit there and think like, what's going on? My hand hurts. Is this hot? Is this dangerous? Emotions, that sense of pain, that sense of worry about my health and safety is going to quickly motivate me to act. We don't always want to change emotion. So I think that in many of the cultural circles that we exist in, we might think of negative emotions as bad and something to be avoided. We know that all emotions are part of the human experience and that they serve an important purpose. And so we don't always want to change emotion. A good example is thinking about anxiety with testing. So this young person who's in school, let's call him Johnny, he has this math test today that we talked about. If he had no anxiety about the math test, he probably would have a hard time sitting down and studying and feeling motivated to do that. However, if he has so much anxiety that he's going to have difficulty sitting down and recalling the information that he's learned, he's going to have difficulty kind of attending to and reading the questions on his test, that could be problematic. And so too little or too much anxiety or worry can be challenging, but actually moderate levels of anxiety can be quite helpful to our human goals. Okay. So if we have a student or we have a young person who we're supporting, and we think we don't really necessarily want to change the emotion, we might consider validation. So it makes sense that you're nervous about this math test. We do want to consider changing emotion if for kind of two reasons. So one is if it gets in the way of what a child wants to do, playing, being with friends, going to soccer practice, or what they need to do, going to school, doing chores, doing their homework. Or if the emotion doesn't fit the facts. So for example, if I was, leaving work and I was feeling nervous about walking down a street in our pretty safe neighborhood in San Francisco in broad daylight with tons of people around, that doesn't really fit the facts. And so that would be an example of where we might want to change the level of anxiety. It's hard to change emotions directly. We've all probably tried to tell ourselves, like, just don't feel anxious, just don't feel anxious. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. That doesn't tend to really work. And so we want to use actions or thought change as kind of our avenue into that cognitive triangle that we were talking about in the beginning, that three-part triangle. Okay, so thinking a little bit about this case that we were talking about. So there was the case that I put up in the beginning. Let me see if I have a little, yep. This case that I put up in the beginning. So Johnny is nervous about his math test. What would be things, if you look at the turquoise text, what would be areas that we could change to help Johnny feel less anxious? And I'd love if folks could type into the chat. Yes. Thank you, Peyton. Affirmations and positive thinking. We might help Johnny to think more positively about the potential outcome of the test. Yes, Mackenzie, I love that. Checking the facts about how prepared he is, reminding him that he studied, whether I'm going to fail is a realistic thought. Evan love that too, validating how he's feeling. We know that validation is a form of emotion regulation in of itself. So receiving validation either from ourselves or from another person actually tends to help to soften an emotion, decrease an emotional experience. Okay, thank you all. So we have similar ideas to you all. So the colors have shifted. What was turquoise is now orange, but we can help Johnny to influence his thoughts as somebody alluded to. So we can help him to think like, I studied hard and I'll do my best. Even if I don't do well on this test, there's 10 other tests this marking period. I can try again. It will be okay. We can support Johnny and potentially his family if they're able to participate to make a plan to get into school. Or if Johnny's having difficulty speaking up in class because he's so nervous about tests when they're happening, we can develop a reward system to help reward him for speaking up in class and kind of gradually increase the incidences of him doing so. Thinking about the environment as well, and I love thinking about this particularly in schools, but we can think about similar things at home. We could potentially help Johnny sit in a calmer place in the classroom, maybe a tangible support. If somebody's feeling anxious or sad or having a negative emotion, these really small, tangible things like a drink of water or a 10-second break in the hallway to take a few deep breaths, those really can go a long way. And we can see that the idea is that changing any of these corners of the triangle can potentially change Johnny's feelings that he's wanting to shift. So building on shifting thoughts, There's some common what we like to call thinking traps that often come up for humans. And many of us humans have particular patterns of thinking traps or particular categories that they tend to go to more often than others. So I invite you to look over this and sort of think for yourself, what do I tend to fall into when I'm having a difficult time? What are the thinking traps that I'm more prone to falling into? And we can also sometimes share these with kids, particularly like older elementary and older kids can really get behind these ideas and really identify these different patterns in themselves, which can be quite helpful. Because once we know these patterns, it can be easier to identify when these patterns are coming up again in the future. Some language pearls for loosening thinking traps with kids. So if you're noticing or they're noticing that they're getting stuck in a thinking trap, we might ask them, what would you tell a friend who is having the same fear about their math test? Can you think of a kinder way to talk to yourself? That could happen. You could fail your math test. What's another possible thing that could happen? What's more likely? And if you do fail the test, what would you do? You know, could you talk to the teacher and see if you could make it up? Could you ask the teacher for an extra credit assignment? Could you study extra hard for the next test? One thing we really want to point out is that when when emotions are involving experiences of oppression, such as systemic racism, so say somebody has been in a situation where they've experienced racism, it's not appropriate to use thought change strategies. That's going to be incredibly invalidating and potentially add to that person's experience of racial oppression. And so we would want to use validation instead in those circumstances. Even if we're not sure that we're seeing it in the exact same way that the other person is, if that's their experience, we want to validate that experience. Okay. And then thinking a little bit about behavior change. So these are some go-to coping tools that we often offer to young people, and many of these are appropriate for all different ages, and many of them don't require any equipment, like deep breaths, jumping jacks. You can do those anywhere. And so sometimes we might invite students to engage in these activities as a way to help to regulate their emotions. And one that I want to highlight is called opposite action. So this is basically what emotions usually send us urges. So for example, when we have the emotion of anxiety or worry, we tend to want to avoid. Johnny asked to stay home from school. He wanted to avoid going to school. Opposite action is a skill that tells us to do the hard thing despite the challenging emotion. So to go to school and take the test despite the emotion, to if somebody's feeling sad, to get out of bed and go to that friend play date despite feeling sad. We think this is such an important skill that I think we have actually a whole skill session dedicated to it later this year, which will be really helpful. Environment. There's a lot that can be done, and some of these are around school and some of them are around home. So thinking about physical needs, making sure that Johnny has what he needs in terms of snacks, water, rest. Families and classrooms can implement rituals that support belonging and routine. So, for example, if Johnny's routinely having difficulty getting out the door in the morning, we might think about supporting his family to develop a goodbye routine. Maybe he goes and pets the dog and then, kisses dad goodbye and then goes to get on the school bus. And sort of having that routine can help to ease those transitions. We want to collaborate with families as well when possible to do a few different things. So one is to engage in those opposite action activities. So encouraging going to school, taking the test, getting out of bed and playing with friends, even when it feels difficult. And also reinforcing effort rather than outcome. So for this case with Johnny, we'd want to, once he does take the test, we'd want to really say, Johnny, that's amazing that you took the test, regardless of what his outcome is, because we know that actually just sitting down to take that test was really, really challenging for him. Okay. So our key takeaways here, emotions serve a purpose. We have them for a reason and we don't necessarily always want to change them. But sometimes we do, because sometimes they're getting in the way of what kids want or need to do, or sometimes they don't fit the facts. And so if we do want to change emotion, we have a couple of different tools. One is we can take an action, and that could be changing a behavior or changing the environment. And the other is to change our thoughts. And finally, we have some references here for you all. So thank you all so much for your attention, and I'm going to turn it back to my colleagues.